Hello, welcome to tonight's story. Today we will uncover why it sucked to be a worker at the Great Pyramid and more. Let's begin. Imagine the heat of the Egyptian sun pressing down on your back like a stone slab. The air shimmers around you, not with magic, but with dust and exhaustion. You're not standing in front of the Great Pyramid. You're deep in its bones, where it all began. The quarries of Giza. You're not a slave. Let's clear that up first. Contrary to the Hollywood myths, most labourers who helped build the Great Pyramid were not enslaved people dragged from distant lands. You're more likely a conscripted farmer. When the Nile floods your fields and there's no farming to be done, the state finds another use for your back. They say it's an honour to build the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu, the man they call a god. But honours don't feed your children, so you've left your family behind for 3-month stints of brutal labour. You're promised bread, beer, onions, and a place in history. But here in the limestone quarry, history feels very far away. The day begins before the sun. You sleep in a rough dormitory with dozens of others, your body wedged between strangers, snoring and scratching in the dark. There are no mattresses, no privacy, and lice are part of life. When the overseer's voice booms, you scramble to your feet, your legs aching before they even begin to move. You carry a copper chisel, a wooden mallet, and a prayer that the blade won't snap today. In the quarry, the noise is endless. A dozen hammers echo at once. You work in teams, split in blocks from the bedrock. First, you chisel deep grooves into the stone. Then you wedge wooden planks into the cuts and soak them with water. The wood expands, forcing the rock to crack. When it does, there's a thunderous snap that rattles your bones. The dust clings to everything, your skin, your lungs, your food. There's no escaping it. Some men develop what we now know to be silicosis, though they don't have a name for it yet. Just a cough that never goes away. The older workers wheeze between strikes. The younger ones pretend not to notice. And then there's the heat. In the summer, the rock itself radiates warmth like a kiln. You drink lukewarm beer, flat and thick, made from leftover bread and barley, and wipe your brow with a rag blackened by sweat and grime. Injuries are constant. A mistimed swing can shatter fingers. A block can roll the wrong way and crush a foot. There's no such thing as a doctor, only rudimentary healers who chant over herbs and hope for the best. But the worst is when the rock won't break. You work a block all day, chiselling, wedging, pounding, and it holds. You feel the eyes of the overseer on your back, watching, judging. He carries a staff, more for show than punishment, but the message is clear. You are expected to produce. If the block won't yield, you will. Some workers are chosen to shape the finer blocks, those destined for the king's chamber or the polished outer casing. These men are treated better, fed more. You envy them. They don't have to haul, because after quarrying comes transport. Massive blocks, some weighing over 2 tons, must be dragged to the pyramid site, not rolled, dragged, on sledges across desert roads, soaked with water to reduce friction. Teams of men use ropes, grunting in unison, heels digging into the sand. And that's just the limestone. For the inner passages and the king's sarcophagus, harder stones are used, like granite from Aswan, hundreds of miles away. Imagine the logistics: boats, ramps, slaves, specialists. But you're just one back among thousands, one breathless voice in a chorus of labour. They say that some workers were buried near the pyramid itself. that they earned a place of honour for their service. But that's little comfort when your hands are bleeding, your joints are inflamed, and your dreams are filled with falling stone. Still, you keep going, because you've seen it rising slowly, impossibly above the horizon, layer by layer, year by year, the Great Pyramid, a mountain shaped by men, your sweat, your strength, your suffering, set in stone. But for now, the sun is climbing, your stomach is growling, and the overseer is shouting again. Break time is over, and the rock isn't going to move itself. Now, imagine gazing up at the Great Pyramid, its white casing stones gleaming in the desert sun like a beacon to the gods. Now imagine being the man who ordered it to be built, not as a monument, not even as a home for the dead, but as proof that he was not like other men. His name was Khufu, better known to us as Khufu. To his people, he was more than a man. He was Netja, a god, a living Horus, or the falcon of divine kingship, a being who walked the earth briefly before joining the eternal stars. But while time has worn away his pyramid's smooth white finish, it has also chipped away at the myth of his godliness, revealing perhaps a more complicated man beneath the crown. Khufu ruled Egypt during the 4th dynasty, around 2580 BC, an era of ambition, innovation, and power concentrated like the very sun. His pyramid, the largest in Egyptian history, was just one part of a vast necropolis, temples, causeways, satellite pyramids for queens and mastabas for nobles. It took decades to complete, and thousands of workers gave their labour and sometimes their lives to fulfil his vision. But who was this man they toiled for? The ancient Greeks, visiting Egypt 2,000 years later, called him cruel. Herodotus wrote that Khufu closed the temples and forbade sacrifices, plunging Egypt into misery while conscripting tens of thousands to labour on his tomb. He even claimed Khufu prostituted his daughter to raise funds for construction. It's a salacious tale, but Herodotus was working with legends, not facts. Modern historians believe the truth is likely more nuanced. Khufu wasn't necessarily evil, but he was absolute. He lived in a palace far from the dusty edges of labour camps. He wore linen robes so fine they shimmered like mist. When he appeared in public, he was carried, never walking, his eyes hidden behind coal, his feet never touching the ground. Even nobles had to bow and lower their gaze in his presence. And yet, Khufu's image is a ghost. Only one tiny statue of him survives, barely taller than a thumb. No grand wall reliefs, no towering temples bearing his name. Just this small seated figure, carved from ivory, unearthed near Abydos. It's as if he wanted to be remembered not in image, but in structure, in something eternal. His pyramid was to be his voice across the ages. To his priests, Khufu was the earthly vessel of Ra, the sun god. His soul would rise into the sky to join the celestial gods and be reborn with each dawn. The pyramid wasn't just a tomb, it was a cosmic machine. The narrow shafts inside the king's chamber aligned with specific stars, guiding his spirit to the heavens. To command the construction of such a thing required not just power, but conviction. Khufu was not interested in modesty. He saw himself as part of something greater, a divine cycle, a living god who deserved a throne among the stars. And with that belief came the authority to bend the entire kingdom toward his will. But was he loved? We don't know. No poets wrote of his smile. No songs of his kindness survive. His legacy, etched into the limestone of the Giza plateau, is one of ambition, not affection. What we do know is that his pyramid stood as the tallest human-made structure in the world for over 3,800 years. No other king, not even Ramses the Great, left behind such a monument. Its very endurance is a testament to Khufu's vision, and yet there's a peculiar silence around him in the records that follow. His successors didn't build pyramids quite so large. His own son, Djedefre, moved away from Giza entirely, perhaps in defiance or in awe. Khufu had cast a long shadow, and maybe that was his point. He didn't need to be remembered kindly. He only needed to be remembered. So today, when tourists gaze at the pyramid and wonder who lay beneath that mass of stone, they speak his name, Khufu, the man who believed he was divine. And in that moment, his pyramid does what he built it to do. It speaks. In the shadow of the Great Pyramid, beneath the weight of thousands of tons of stone, lies a chamber so silent, so tightly sealed, that time itself seems to hold its breath. No inscription marks its door, because there is no door, and yet this was a tomb, or so we believe. Step quietly now. The flickering torchlight barely touches the carved limestone as you descend into the pyramid's heart. You duck through low corridors, squeezing past granite blocks placed like puzzles. There are passageways that slope down into darkness and others that rise toward mysterious chambers. The air grows thinner, staler, as if it hasn't moved in millennia. And then you reach it, the so-called Queen's Chamber. Not a queen's, of course. That's just what early archaeologists assumed. But no body was ever found here. No funerary items, no golden mask. Just a chamber and silence. Even deeper lies the king's chamber, buried beneath layers of stone blocks stacked to prevent collapse. Here, too, is no grand sarcophagus, just a plain, empty granite box. Was this Khufu's final resting place, or a decoy? You see, what's unsettling about the Great Pyramid is not what it contains, but what it doesn't. No treasures, no hieroglyphs, no burial artifacts at all. The ancient Egyptians believed in the power of the written word to guide souls through the afterlife. Most royal tombs are covered in prayers and protective spells, the pyramid texts, coffin texts, and Book of the Dead. But not here. The tomb of Khufu is wordless, as if deliberately made unreadable, as if meant to be unseen. Even the builders seemed to know something strange was at play. Some chambers were sealed off mid-construction, others were hidden behind massive stone plugs, slid into place to block off corridors. Some of the shafts leading from the chambers to the pyramid's face were once thought to be air vents, until they were found to end in solid stone, some capped with copper doors. Why build a door that leads nowhere? Why carve a shaft that no one could crawl through? These mysteries have led many to speak of curses. We moderns like to scoff at that word. But imagine being the first to enter these sealed places after thousands of years. The stale air thick with dust, the pressure of all that stone above you, the knowledge that you are standing where no one has stood since the time of Khufu himself. In 820 AD, the Arab Caliph al-Ma'mun forced his way into the pyramid. He found empty chambers, slanted shafts, and strange stone configurations. No gold, no body, just a place that seemed watched. He left disappointed, but others have not been so lucky. Over the centuries, tales spread of explorers who fell ill, of workers crushed by collapsing passages, of engineers who heard voices in the dark while surveying sealed rooms. In 1993, a tiny robot was sent into one of the unexplored shafts. It travelled meters into the darkness, transmitting eerie footage until it hit a stone slab. Carved into it were two copper handles, like a door. The world waited for it to be opened. In 2002, a second robot drilled through the slab, only to find another block behind it. Still sealed, still waiting. Some called it the door to the stars. Others, Khufu's trap. Still others whispered it was never meant to be opened. And perhaps that is the point. The pyramid was not designed for visitors. It was a fortress, a machine to transform a man into a god, and a tomb sealed so completely, so perfectly, that even time could not find its way inside. Whether Khufu's body ever lay within is unknown, but one thing is certain: the builders wanted this place hidden, not just from thieves, but from the world itself, and perhaps from something even more dangerous, the curiosity of the living. The stars glimmer overhead as the desert wind cools the sand beneath your feet. The Great Pyramid looms behind you, its silhouette slicing the night sky like a blade of shadow. But your eyes are fixed elsewhere, on the Sphinx, half lion, half man. The creature watches you with an eternal stare carved in stone, its nose long since lost to time, its mouth unreadable. Some say it guards the pyramid, others say it is older still, watching not just kings, but the stars themselves. Tonight, beneath its gaze, there is a feast. You are not a pharaoh, not a noble. You're a high-ranking overseer, perhaps, or a temple scribe, invited as a guest of honour. This is no peasant's campfire meal. This is an offering feast, both sacred and political. Long wooden tables are arranged in a crescent. Oil lamps flicker, their flames dancing in the breeze. Musicians play soft tones on flutes and lutes. Dancers in white linen sway like reeds in the Nile. And in the centre, food. Golden trays overflow with roast duck, wild goose, and salted fish wrapped in lotus leaves. There are lentils spiced with cumin, bowls of stewed dates, honey-sweetened bread shaped like small pyramids, and jugs of thick beer, darker than what the workers drink. For the honoured few, pitchers of imported wine from the Levant are poured into polished alabaster cups. Every dish is placed with ritual care, because this is not just a banquet, it is a divine act. To feast beneath the Sphinx is to dine in the presence of the gods. The creature itself, known in later texts as Hor-em-Akhet, Horus in the horizon, was believed to be a manifestation of solar power, guarding the necropolis and watching over the rising and setting sun. Some believed it whispered the will of the gods to the pharaoh in dreams. Others thought it was a royal ancestor, its body carved from living rock as a symbol of divine kingship. And so the feast is not only for the living. The table is split, half for the guests, half for the dead. Priests in leopard skin robes move among the offerings, chanting the HTTP Dinesu formula, a gift which the king gives. They call on Osiris, god of the underworld, on Anubis, guide of souls, and on Khufu himself, now passed into the stars. They place strips of beef, slices of bread, and cups of beer on stone altars. The smoke from burning incense curls upward, carrying prayers to the heavens. It is said that if the gods are pleased, the scent alone will nourish them. And yet this sacredness is not without its tension. Everyone here knows the pyramid is more than a tomb. It is a statement, a declaration of power. This feast, like the structure it honours, is political theatre cloaked in devotion. The guests smile, they sip wine, They complement the roast duck, but they also glance now and then toward the dark outline of the pyramid, wondering what or who truly lies within. Even the Sphinx seems to judge. Its expression doesn't change. It never has. But in the flicker of firelight, the lines of its face seem deeper. The shadows in its eyes seem longer, and you wonder, what did it see? Did it watch as thousands toiled in the sun, hauling stones and cutting roads? Did it bear witness to secret rituals, whispered oaths, or silent rebellions? Did Khufu himself ever walk beneath its gaze, pondering the eternity he sought to command? You drain the last of your wine and wipe your mouth with a linen cloth. The feast is winding down. The dancers are slowing, the musicians are packing their instruments. But the Sphinx remains, unmoving, unblinking, watching long after the plates are cleared, the guests have gone, and the stars begin their slow arc across the sky. Here, beneath the shadow of the gods and the ghost of a king, even a banquet is never just a meal. It is memory. It is legacy. It is stone. Before the pyramids, before Khufu, there were gods carved in the desert, and after them, long after Giza's towering shadows had faded, there was a boy who wore the double crown of Egypt, a boy named Tutankhamun. His name means living image of Amun, but most of us know him simply as King Tut, the boy king whose death, burial, and astonishing rediscovery would ignite the world's imagination like no other pharaoh in history. Let us step back over 3,300 years. The land is Egypt, but it is a kingdom in spiritual crisis. Tutankhamun was born around 1341 BCE, during a period of massive religious upheaval. His probable father, Akhenaten, had attempted to erase Egypt's traditional gods, replacing the entire pantheon with a single solar deity, the Aten. Temples were closed, statues smashed, the ancient gods fell silent, and then Akhenaten died. Tutankhamun ascended to the throne at the age of 9 or 10, a child in a court of powerful priests and generals, and behind his soft voice, others pulled the strings. But his reign marked a return. The temples of Amun were reopened, the gods restored. His name, originally Tutankhaten, was changed to honour the god Amun instead. He married his half-sister Ankhesenamun. They had no surviving children. And after just 9 years on the throne, he died. No one knows exactly how. Some say it was a fever. Others claim he broke his leg and died from infection. A CT scan in the early 2000s suggested he suffered from malaria and a severe bone disorder. He was frail, likely in pain for most of his short life. And yet, in death, he would become immortal. His tomb in the Valley of the Kings was small, strangely so for a king, hastily finished, rushed even. The wall paintings were still wet when they buried him. It's likely he died unexpectedly, and the tomb was never meant for him. But it was filled with treasures, gold shrines, ebony statues, lapis lazuli amulets, and of course the mask. That serene golden face with almond-shaped eyes and a cobra on its brow, perhaps the most famous artifact in the world. And then, silence. For over 3,000 years, his name was forgotten. His tomb, tucked beneath the rubble of later constructions, escaped the tomb robbers that looted nearly every royal resting place until 1922. A British archaeologist named Howard Carter, after years of searching, uncovered a step, then a doorway, then, behind a sealed wall, rooms full of gold. When Lord Carnarvon asked if he could see anything, Carter simply replied, Yes! Wonderful things. Tutankhamun was reborn. His name appeared in newspapers, museums, and headlines across the globe. The world was gripped by Egyptomania. Jewellery, fashion, and even silent films were inspired by his treasures. But fame has its shadows. Soon after the tomb's opening, people began to whisper of a curse. Lord Carnarvon, who funded the excavation, died just months later from an infected mosquito bite. The lights in Cairo supposedly went out the moment he passed. His dog howled and dropped dead at home in England. Over the years, others involved in the excavation met untimely or strange deaths. Some were natural, some weren't. But the myth of the pharaoh's curse took hold. Even modern scientists have wondered, could ancient mold or bacteria, sealed in the tomb for centuries, have posed a threat? Possibly, but most historians agree. The curse was never real. Still, it felt real. And that, perhaps, was the point. For a young king with a short, fragile life, forgotten by history and buried in haste, Tutankhamun had the last word. His golden face became the symbol of ancient Egypt. His tomb brought ancient history to millions, and his name, once lost to the sands, was now spoken on every continent. All this from a boy who ruled barely a decade, a boy who walked in the shadow of older kings, Khufu, Ramses, Thutmose, and still managed to outshine them all. And perhaps somewhere in the halls of the afterlife, Tutankhamun smiles. Because while others built mountains to be remembered, he needed only a single mask. And that will be all for tonight's story. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you again soon.